Even if you never win a championship or never win dozens of races in the NASCAR Cup Series, a driver can feasibly become a Hall of Fame nominee just off of crown jewel wins alone. If you win the Daytona 500, the sport's biggest race, the Coke 600, the sport's longest race, the Brickyard 400, the race at the most historic venue, or the Southern 500, the oldest speedway race in NASCAR, then you have some serious bragging rights. Jamie McMurray almost single-handedly pushed NASCAR towards the win-and-you're-in format we have today, because casual fans couldn't fathom the idea that a guy won 2 crown jewels in 1 year and didn't make the chase. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have Hall of Fame caliber drivers who feel like they have better odds of winning the lottery than winning specific crown jewel races. One of the most famous crown jewel curses that almost every NASCAR fan is familiar with is Dale and Daytona. 20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration, all that good stuff. But Dale did eventually break the curse. One driver who should have broken the curse multiple times but never did was Tony Stewart. I've been watching a lot of old Daytona 500s this offseason because my life is devoid of meaning without cars turning left on a weekly basis. And it genuinely shocks me how you can watch a Daytona 500 from almost any year in the 2000s and Tony Stewart always has the car to beat, and yet he never wins. 2001, running at the front, ends up on his lid with 27 to go. 2002, starts 6th, quickly moves towards the lead, ends up with an engine failure in the first 10 laps. 2003, pretty much ran 3rd behind Michael Waltrip and Dale Jr. all day, is charging towards the front in the last run, and reigns. 2004, he dominates, losing to Dale Jr. at the very end.
Will you cut that out?
Dominates again in 2005, gets shuffled back in the last run because he had no teammates to help him. Ran up front for the entire race in 2006, but the race-winning run never materialized. Dominated again in 2007, running in the top 2 for 130 laps, and crashed out of the lead to finish dead last. 2008 is somehow even more heartbreaking. He leads on the last lap, but the Penske duo of Ryan Newman and Kurt Busch teams up to pass him on the backstretch. And as soon as the decade rolled over in 2010, Stewart would never be a factor in the Daytona 500 again, as it appeared that he just couldn't get his Stewart-Haas cars as fast as the old ones from Gibbs. And to make matters worse, he couldn't even run in his last scheduled Daytona 500 in 2016 due to a preseason dune buggy accident. His hopes of finally winning the Daytona 500 were washed away a full month before the race started. His actual last showing in 2015 wasn't much better, as he crashed out only 72 laps in to finish 42nd. Stewart led 299 laps in the Daytona 500 throughout his career, but could never lead the most important one. At the very least, he finally experienced victory in this race as the team owner of Kurt Busch's car in 2017. But Daytona is just the most glaring example of a gap in Stewart's Hall of Fame resume. It's quite surprising that for a 3-time champion and 49-time race winner that Stewart's only crown jewel wins ever came at his home track of Indianapolis. He was almost never a factor in the Southern 500, and likewise only got close to winning the Coca-Cola 600 once. 2008, the same year where Stewart came gut-wrenchingly close to winning the 500, he also nearly won the Coca-Cola 600. After making a green flag pit stop with only 13 laps remaining, Stewart cycled to the lead on fresh tires with a nearly 6-second lead. It should have been over. But curses don't care about the odds, because only 10 laps later, Stewart inexplicably blows a fresh right front tire, handing the victory to Kasey Kahne. Goodyear must have remembered that Atlanta rant Stewart went on only a month earlier because they handed him the most defective tire in the garage when it counted most.
Because Goodyear can't build a tire that's worth the crap, so if I were Goodyear, I'd be really embarrassed about this weekend and what they brought us here.
Although, in Tony's defense, Goodyear was on some crack in 2008. They probably blew more tires in that 1 year than the last decade put together. To focus solely on the Daytona 500 for a minute, while Tony Stewart may be the most glaring example of a cursed driver to never win it, the race itself is definitely the most cursed across the garage. Partly because in the last 10 years, the race has transformed into as much of a crapshoot as any other superspeedway race. So instead of legendary drivers winning it, you have guys like Austin Cindric, Michael McDowell, and Ricky Stenhouse pulling into victory lane. But still, some of NASCAR's greatest superspeedway drivers just can't seem to put together a perfect Daytona 500. Take Brad Keselowski for example. He's a 6-time Talladega winner, always runs up front at superspeedways, he's won the duels, he's won the Clash, he's won everything but the Daytona 500. With his closest attempt being a last lap pass on teammate Joey Logano gone wrong in 2021. Same goes for Kyle Busch. He's won everything there is to win at Daytona with the exception of the 500. And since joining RCR, the team with the most well-documented Daytona 500 struggles and triumphs, it seems like history has been repeating itself. He was positioned perfectly to win in 2023 when his teammate Austin Dillon was taken out in a crash, leaving him as a sitting duck. He got sent to the back 8,000 times in 2024 and kept charging to the front almost single-handedly before he finally ran out of time. Very recently, he passed Tony Stewart for most laps led in the 500 without a victory with 330. It seems like between Brad and Busch, one of them has to win it soon, right? Well, if one of them does win this year's 500, they will become only the 5th driver in NASCAR history to win all 4 Crown Jewel races, joining the elite company of Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt, Jimmy Johnson, and Kevin Harvick. 2 other Hall of Famers hold the distinct dishonor of finishing second in the 2 closest Daytona 500s ever. Martin Truex Jr. in 2016 and Mark Martin in 2007. Okay, Martin's not a Hall of Famer yet, but that's not too controversial of a prediction, right? At the very least, these two had radical success in another Crown Jewel race, the Coca-Cola 600. It seems like of the 4 Crown Jewel races, the Coca-Cola 600 is the one that most Hall of Famers have successfully won. But one driver who was habitually tormented by the Coca-Cola 600 had to be Dale Earnhardt Jr. In his first 600 in 2000, he led an impressive 175 laps and finished 4th. With a strong start like that, surely he would win it eventually, right? Well, 2001 was a wash. He led 53 laps and was running in the top 10 in 2002 when his engine blew, suffered a brake failure in 2003, finished a solid 6th in 2004, crashed again in 2005. In 2007, he had actually cycled in front of Jimmy Johnson and Denny Hamlin to be the fastest car in the last run of the race, but finished 8th when the 7 cars in front of him saved enough gas to make it without stopping. He led the most laps and finished 5th in 2008, and that was despite blowing a tire while leading the race and suffering extremely heavy wall contact. What? Tire failures in 2008? Say it isn't so! Dale Jr. fans don't talk about 2009 or 2010, so I have to honor the code. And then, 2011, the most heartbreaking of all, running out of gas in the last corner of the last lap. This is when everyone should have realized the Coke 600 is Dale Jr.'s version of Tony Stewart trying to win Daytona. It doesn't matter how fast his cars are, how good his strategy is, he will find a way to lose it. This was a race that Jr. was fast in almost every single year, and Lady Luck would find a way to stop him. I don't know if any driver was ever as jinxed in the Coke 600 as Dale Jr. was. The Southern 500 is a much harder race to find a jinxed driver for, as pretty much aside from Regan Smith with a bold pit strategy in 2011, only the best of the best ever win this race. And yes, I would include Eric Jones and Chase Briscoe in that category as well. I know they don't have a lot of wins, but they're both solid enough drivers. Obviously, the best drivers to never win the Southern 500, I would say, are Tony Stewart and Rusty Wallace, but I wouldn't describe either of them as cursed. They were just never the best Darlington drivers. One driver who was remarkably great at Darlington, but was almost always cursed in the Southern 500 though, was Darrell Waltrip. Darrell had won 4 times in the Darlington Sprint race, but could never seem to put together the full Southern 500. Which is why it's extremely ironic that when Darrell did finally win the Southern 500, it was by sheer luck. In 1992, he struggled for most of the day, but when weather approached the track late in the day, DW stretched his fuel to lead the final 6 laps just before the rains fell to prematurely end the race. It may not have been the flashiest Southern 500 victory, but I'm sure it's one that DW will take all the same. On this day, DW's Darlington curse may have ended, but it surely cursed the rest of his career, as DW would never win again in the 8 years following this race. For a more recent example though, Tyler Reddick certainly seems cursed at Darlington across the board, running up front for the last several Darlington races, but never quite closing the deal. He has lots of time left in his career to win it though, so I'm not quite ready to call him cursed just yet. As for our last Crown Jewel race, the Brickyard 400, one driver stands above the rest as the most cursed of all, Denny Hamlin. For a guy with 3 Daytona 500s, 3 Southern 500s, and a Coca-Cola 600 victory, Indianapolis is the lone jewel missing from Denny's crown. And it's almost ridiculous how many times this guy should have won the race. He arguably had the fastest car both in 2008 and 2014, but pit strategy didn't go his way. In 2018, he took the lead at just the right time in the race and looked to be driving away with the victory when Landon Castle and Jeffrey Earnhardt racing for chump change crashed in the back, allowing Brad Keselowski to steal the win on fresher tires. Man, this will always be my least favorite thing about NASCAR racing, is that you have 2 guys and they're both going, no, I can't finish 35th, I gotta finish 34th, and then they change the entire outcome of the race. Or if you're Austin Cindric at Nashville, you change the entire championship. In 2020, Hamlin maintained a solid 1-second lead over Kevin Harvick in the closing laps when a right front tire blew, leading to a violent wreck. Even on the Indianapolis road course, Dennis couldn't catch a break when he got turned by Chase Briscoe, who was under penalty for course cutting. I don't consider the road course a crown jewel race, but it just goes to show that this track hates Denny Hamlin more than most fans hate Denny Hamlin. But beyond these individual races, who is the most cursed at crown jewel events in general? Well, there's only one driver in all of NASCAR with more than 15 victories who's never won a crown jewel race, and that driver is Chase Elliott. In particular, Chase has been snake-bit in a couple of crown jewels that he should have won, both in 2020. In the 2020 Coca-Cola 600, he led with 2 laps to go when his teammate William Byron cut a tire and spun out. To this day, I have no idea why Alan Gustafson pitted Chase Elliott for 4 tires and fuel. This is the 550 package, just go full throttle and turn. It's not hard to keep the lead. And later that same year, in a very uncharacteristically bad move, Martin Truex Jr. cleared himself across Chase Elliott's nose while passing for the lead, effectively ending both of their nights in the Southern 500. But $1 Million Bill made his legacy from winning crown jewel races, so let's wait and see if Chase can eventually do the same thing. So which driver do you think is going to break their crown jewel curse next? Let me know in the comment section down below. But don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and check out dailydownforce.com for more awesome NASCAR content.